Hey, welcome back to Shutterbug Club. I'm your host, Sue. Today I'm going to be talking with Sarah Wagner, and we're talking about a topic that isn't often talked about in the photography community, but it's a really important one that pretty much everyone struggles with and should be talked about more. We're going to be talking about when you try and do something, but it doesn't exactly go as planned, and how you can pivot your business because anyone who has achieved any level of success has had to pivot. They have tried things that didn't work out and had to find a new path to take in order to get to where they want to go because business, creativity, photography is not linear. Nobody wants to talk about the hard times. Everyone wants to talk about how great it is to have what you have now. We often don't talk about the struggles and the challenges that you've had to face to get there. So I'm going to be talking with Sarah about some challenges she's faced in her business and how she was able to pivot and really think about the future, plan for long term in order to have more peace of mind and get to where she wants to go and have a business that she truly loves and that works for her rather than her feeling burnt out and tired and overworked all the time. And if you feel like you maybe don't know what is next for you in your business or in your photography, you might be ready for a pivot. So get comfy. This one's going to be a good one. Sarah, for anyone who doesn't know you, can you kind of share a quick introduction of yourself, where you're from, who you are, and what you like to photograph?
Yeah. So my name is Sarah Wagner. I am the owner and founder of Chasing Creative. I am based in Southwest Florida, and I mostly work with families, particularly families on vacation. And I've been in the photography industry for about 5 years now. It'll be 5 years in May and 4 years full time. So I guess I'm not really a newbie anymore. I don't know if I would consider myself a veteran, but it kind of feels like that sometimes.
Yeah, that's
But
exactly
yeah,
where I am at too, 5 years. Yeah, it feels like a weird transition period almost.
yes, definitely.
Yeah, I love that. And then you do families, you said?
Yes, primarily families, mostly people visiting my area on vacation. There's a lot of snowbirds down here, so people come down around holidays to visit their parents and grandparents and love to get some
Mhm.
beach photos. So that's primarily who I've worked with over the last 5 years.
And you have an in-person sales model, right?
Well, not necessarily, not yet.
Oh,
So
yeah, okay.
I've been doing shoot and burn for the last 5 years. Over the last year, I've integrated some products into that after sessions, just kind of some upsells
Mhm.
because I feel like I kind of was capped at where I was at with my prices. I didn't really feel like I could go much higher. I was already pretty much the highest for shoot and burn in my area. But felt like I was leaving money on the table. And I'm always looking to try to maximize what I can make per session. So I am in the process of a pivot, which I'm sure we'll talk about, to a slightly different area of photography as I prepare for some big life changes. And I do feel like IPS is the right model for that. So I am in the process of kind of mastering that and slowly shifting to that direction. Um, to be
Yeah,
determined on whether or not I will shift my outdoor current sessions to that eventually. We'll just kind of have to see. But yes,
yeah,
it's a process.
it is a process. I love that you mentioned pivots too, because we are gonna talk a lot about pivoting your business. So can you kind of share a little bit of a pivot that you've done where you were at in the beginning and then just like what it was that made you want to pivot and change directions in your photography?
Yeah, so I've had quite a few pivots. The first pivot, I would say, was kind of a required pivot. Only a few months after I left my corporate job to go full time. Things were rocking and rolling. Business was just growing every single month. And then, my area got a direct hit from Category 5 hurricane. So almost
Oh,
overnight, literally, my business just kind of halted since I particularly work with tourists. So
yeah.
that was kind of like a "Oh, no. What am I gonna do?" Everything just, like, got canceled overnight. These hotels and resorts and things aren't even inhabitable, so all these clients' vacations are getting canceled, and now they're canceling their bookings with me, and so, I did a quick pivot to try to bring in, kind of like a cash injection and started advertising travel sessions. So I, just touched base with everyone I knew in nearby states that I could drive to. And I released some dates and started booking sessions, and North Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, Alabama. And I just kind of did like a tour. And that became something I offered the next 2 years, and that I really enjoyed. But, once I got back home and, maybe the immediate effects of the hurricane had calmed down a little bit, but then we were just kinda left in the ruins, and there's not much tourism happening, and so then it was like, "Okay, I need a long-term pivot because there's nobody coming here. There's nowhere to stay. We've got a long way to go to repair." So, um, I shifted all my marketing to areas outside of my immediate home beaches. So then I started shooting sessions that were about an hour and a half away from me. So still with tourists, still with families on vacation, but I just expanded my radius so that I could continue working while my area rebuilt. So for the next 2 years, almost all of my sessions were about an hour and a half away. And so that kind of led me to the next question of, okay, what's my next move here? Because I can't do this forever. This is a lot of driving. I'm hopefully going to have a family in the next couple years, and I can't be driving 3 hours round trip multiple nights a week. Um, and, business was slowly starting to come back in my areas, but now I had built up such strong marketing in these other cities that it was like, I didn't really have any business coming in, even though people were starting to come back to those other areas. All my bookings were still in these other areas because that's where I had been working. So that led me to kind of a few other pivots.
Okay.
Let's see. I kind of was spinning my wheels a little bit, trying to figure out what's next. I chased the wind a little bit and I pivoted into some directions like online education, and then weddings and elopements that ultimately I decided were actually not right for me, um, which, was
How
a bit
did you
frustrating.
That's a really hard thing for a lot of photographers. How did you know that that wasn't right for you? Because I know a lot of people struggle to really find their niche. So how did you realize what it was you wanted?
Yeah, so I guess I learned by doing, right? So, I launched an online course right after the hurricane as well. Great cash injection. Decided, oh, this could be like the next big thing for me. Like I could just be an online educator for, and eventually like pull back on shooting a lot once I have kids. So I was like, that seems like it would be a great fit, right? And so, I started pushing towards that. I refilmed my course like super professional. I took a huge coaching program on launching online courses. I spent thousands of dollars, hours and hours and hours, getting this thing up and running, building this amazing funnel, like learning it all myself. Um, Only to be really exhausted when I didn't really see results come in because
Mhm.
what I learned then was that with online education, um, it's not really passive. um,
Yeah.
and I thought that, that was the appeal to me, for online education. I was like, "Yeah, I can just make money in my sleep while, I rock my kid to sleep." Like, and, I realized that actually to succeed in the world of online education, you have to show up daily and build a community and be constantly giving of yourself, teaching for free all the time, putting out content constantly. And, I was in a season of life at that time where I had some health things going on and I didn't have it in me to show up anymore. And so, I had spent like a year, um, you know, running my regular business. I'd also that same year been hosting in-person workshops around the US. And so, I had a lot going on. And then I was doing all this back end work trying to build these funnels, these technical pieces that I had just totally neglected my audience. And so then when it came time to relaunch that course, like nobody was there to buy. And then I realized this isn't gonna work unless I show up constantly. And actually, that's not a good fit for me because I don't wanna have to show up daily and be so exposed and showing people my life all the time. Like, I'm actually kind of private when it comes to my personal life. And so I decided, actually, I don't think this is a fit because I don't like to give so much of myself. And also, it was really hard because when somebody doesn't book you It's like, whatever, they don't like my work or they don't like my prices. But if somebody doesn't
Mhm.
hire you as a coach or people aren't buying your courses, the automatic response is they don't like me. They don't think I'm trustworthy. They don't think that I'm worth it. They don't think that know what I'm talking about, right? It's all self like doubt. And so that was another thing. And I was like, I'm gonna have to deal with this all the time. Like
Mhm.
constantly like reminding myself of who I am and my worth. And I'm like, I don't even care to do that. Like I know who I am. I don't want to have to constantly show up and have other people make me feel like I'm not um what I believe I am in my core. So that was how I decided that online education wasn't the right fit for me.
Yeah.
Not saying that I will never be a teacher again. I think that it's just not the right season of life for me right now. I do love teaching. I do love coaching. I do think I have a heart for it, but I think that it was the wrong time. And I also think that I was doing it at a time when honestly online courses are really dying. Like literally Amy Porterfield, Jenna Kutcher, the Heart University, everyone is closing down their courses because
Yeah, I know, seriously.
nobody buys online courses anymore. It was a 2020 thing and then it thrived for a couple years after, but like I tried to launch an online course at a really hard time. And so,
I
that also worked against me.
I love that you just shared that story because that also goes so much into what I wanna focus on in this episode, which is when you decide to make a decision in your business, you usually go through a really tough period where you're like, "Okay, this is not" it's like the valley of misery. I'm sure you know what that is. And it's like, you feel like you're failing. Like, at that point, would you say you had that feeling when you had put so much time and effort into this online thing that you thought people were gonna react amazing and, like, appreciate all this work that you'd done. How did you feel in that moment?
I definitely felt like a failure. Yeah, I felt like I've spent so much money, I've spent so much time, and for a long time I just kept pushing because I was like, it's gonna work eventually. And so, and then I finally had to come to a place of like, I don't think this is gonna work. Not right now. Like this is just not, and it could have been something as simple as my offer was wrong, which I actually think is a big part of it. I think the course
Mhm.
was priced too high for the type of person I was trying to sell to, who is starting in photography and doesn't have a bunch of money coming in. Um, but you know, I I had to remind myself that this course wasn't a total failure. Actually, when you look at the numbers, I at least broke even, if not made more than what I invested into it. Now, time wise, I don't know, but
Yeah.
but I learned a lot along the way
Yeah.
from the timing piece. But when you actually sit down, you look at the numbers, like it actually wasn't a failure. I actually did something really hard that most people would never do.
Yeah.
And I did actually bring in a lot of revenue from it. Even though I didn't bring in the millions that I thought it was going to bring in, I actually probably brought in a lot more revenue than 90% of photographers who say I'm going to launch an online course. So it wasn't actually a failure. And I think we're so easy to say, if I don't hit this goal, it's a failure. But I just don't think you can look at it that way because if you look at it that way, then it's going to be really hard to start the next thing because in your head, you're like, I failed at the last thing. Um, so yeah, that's kinda how I tried to approach it. Some days were
Yeah.
easier than others.
Yeah, and you learned so much, like you said, you're still passionate about that, and so if you did decide to take that journey again later on, you already have that experience under your belt to help you not make those same mistakes. So, yeah, it's not I feel like nothing you do is a failure, there's always stuff you can learn from it. How did you
Mm.
know like, what was the moment when you realized, "Okay, maybe this isn't right for me at this moment?"
I don't know if it was a clear, specific moment. I think it was more just over and over and over hitting those walls,
Yeah.
not seeing results, and, eventually just feeling like, "Okay." And I technically still haven't pulled the plug on it, it's just been sitting there, I'm sitting here paying for all these programs and platforms, um but yeah, I think it's something that eventually you're just like, "Okay, I've tried this, I've tried this, I've tried this." And I had one more thing I was gonna try, and I had did go do the work to attempt adjusting that price, but I just haven't gotten around to pull the trigger and, like, test the marketing again, but
Yeah. How have the people in your life been? when you're kind of in this stage of feeling like you're failing, I know, like, the support of the people around you can make a big difference. Do you feel like you had that support?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super vocal about struggles, I would say. I'm more someone who likes to talk about things after the fact.
Yeah.
But my husband is always a great supporter. He's like a business partner. He always talks me through things. So, when I'd be having a rough day or just feeling like I don't know what to do next, he always helps me get to a place where I can come to a decision on at least like what next step to take. He's really good at like looking at things that way. So, definitely having people in my life to like him, um, to give me ideas and to just motivate me to keep pushing forward or to shift to something else is so valuable.
Yeah, I love that. So what did you pivot to next when you kind of decided to move away from that?
Um, well, simultaneously, I was also pivoting towards wedding and elopement photography, which also turned out to not be a right fit and didn't succeed in the way I wanted it to. So both of those kind of failed pivots, even though I learned a lot, so you can't really call them failures, even though they sort of feel like they were.
Yeah.
But that led me to kind of a period of time where I was just like, I gotta take a step back. Like, I am doing too much here and I'm not getting anywhere. And I don't think either of these things are the right fit for me. So I
Can you
kind of took
talk
a
about
pause.
that's a good thing to know too, when to take a pause. Can you talk about your weddings and elopements and what happened there as well?
Sure. So in trying to figure out kind of what was next, I was also thinking, yeah, going out to the beach so often, shooting so much, like so frequently, financially, like if I could do 2 weddings a month and make the same amount that I make in 8 family sessions a month, like I would do that. Like work 2 days plus a few days of editing or outsource the editing. Like I'm thinking, mom life, like that would fit way better.
Mhm.
So I started well, at first I was very stupid about it and I was like, I want to do destination elopements. And then I quickly was like, wait, this makes no sense. After spending thousands of dollars on workshops and content retreats for destination elopements, I was like, actually, yeah, I can't be traveling all the time if I want to be a mom. So then I was like, okay, I need to do high-end local elopements, like or weddings at, beautiful venues, but I hate beach weddings. I hate them. Like the lighting is so horrible. They're always at ugly
Oh,
resorts. Like it's not high end.
okay.
So I was like really trying to convey a more high end look, but the problem is starting from the ground up, I didn't have connections with anybody in these higher end spaces, like any of the venues, any of the makeup artists. No, everybody knew me as a family photographer. And so um I had expected that when I launched Weddings and Elopements, I would have no trouble booking a higher end client because my family sessions are with higher end clients, but it didn't translate. So I was
Mhm.
getting a lot of inquiries from people who had smaller budgets. I was doing weddings that I didn't like in barns and venues that were not at all high end and were not going to get me to where I wanted to be. Which just left me really frustrated and like I'm not like I didn't even want to photograph the weddings. I mean, I was obviously thankful for the business, but it wasn't getting me where I wanted to go, right? Like it wasn't actually like helping me. And I'm like, look, I can go like do 2 family sessions and make the same amount. Like I'd rather do that than photograph a wedding that like doesn't
Mhm.
like appeal to the brand I'm trying to create. And so um, I tried reaching out to local photographers who were shooting those weddings and nobody would let me shoot for them. I think there was like an intimidation piece because I had already built such a successful brand and I usually had like significantly more followers than them. They just didn't want to help me out.
Wow.
So like I couldn't get anybody to let me shoot with them and I didn't want to spend thousands more dollars trying to create all this content. Um,
Mhm.
when at the end of the day, when it comes to high end, like it's really about who you know anyways and they need to see full on wedding days, like a style shoot's not really enough. Um,
Mhm.
and so I came to the decision of if I want to be shooting those weddings that are $10,000, like it's going to take years for me to get there, to build those connections, to finally get a few good ones so that I've got a decent portfolio and like I can appeal to those kind of clients. like, it's gonna take a long time, and unless I just were to get lucky and finally find someone who would let me shoot with them or for them so I could start building up a portfolio.
Mhm.
And at the same time, I was like, "Okay, I'm shooting all day weddings. That means my whole Saturday, I'm not gonna be with my family." And my husband works normal Monday through Friday, so weekends are when we have time together. I'm like, I don't really want to be shooting on the weekends anyways. Like right now, I barely shoot on the weekends because I shoot with tourists. So I'm like Monday through Friday. That's
Yeah.
when we want to shoot. And they don't care. They're wide open. Their schedules are open. So, I'm like, I'm used to having weekends and I'm like, do I really want to give that up? No. And I don't want to spend 3 more years trying to build this thing. So I decided that I was going to shift away from, from weddings and elopements.
Yeah, you learned some really incredible lessons though doing that, just like the amount of time it actually takes to build the brand and attract the clients you want to attract because I think so many photographers come in with this idea of like, "Oh, I'm just gonna get these clients without putting in the years of work," and then or they'll take all kinds of work, like they'll do weddings, families, seniors, like everything and not specialize on anything, and then when you do that, you can't attract those higher paying clients because they want somebody who specializes. So that's really cool that you were able to realize like, "Okay, I don't want to spend any more of my time in this because long term, is it what you actually want? No." I
No,
love
I know
that.
so many wedding photographers who then shift to photographing families once they have kids. And I'm like,
Yeah.
huh, because they want their weekends back. Their kids have baseball tournaments and ballet recitals, and they have to miss those because they're photographing a wedding all day. And while, of course, there are workarounds, and, eventually my goal would have been to build an associate team and not really shoot. But again,
Yeah.
it would have taken so long when I already had a business that was crushing it, like over here, that I didn't really have to do any work for other than go shoot, So
Yeah.
it just didn't make sense.
So what did you shift to after you decided you weren't gonna do weddings? What happened next?
So next is when I took that break. I was like, I can't. Like, I gotta breathe. Like, I'm so exhausted. I feel like I've just failed and nothing's moving in the right direction. So I took probably like 6 months where I didn't touch the wedding stuff. I didn't touch the online education stuff. I literally just ran my family photography business. And honestly, never had so much peace in my life. Like, it was
Yeah.
just like, I'm like, this is why I did this, right? This is the whole reason that I started my business so that I could have beautiful work-life balance. And like, I barely have to work right now. I'm bringing in well over 6 figures, like without having to do anything essentially, except for go shoot and edit, which, still left me with a few days a week to do whatever the heck I wanted all day. And it was just so nice to just take a breather and enjoy the business that I worked so hard to build. And it just gave me time and some distance and some to get some clarity on what actually is the right next step for me.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, next, um, during that time, I will say, I spent a lot of time thinking about though, like, do I push forward on education or do I completely shut that down? Do
Mhm.
I push forward with weddings and elopements or do I just shut that down? Like, is there another avenue that I take? What can I do? Like, where can I bring in more income while not working as much as I work now? Which, I mean, technically, I don't actually work nowhere near a 40-hour work week. Like, um, some seasons I do. Like, obviously, right now, I'm building something new, so I'm working a lot more. But if I were to not do that, I wouldn't. But I'd still have lots of nights a week that I'd have to be off shooting, and a lot of my bookings come during holiday weeks. I'm, like, booked every single night, multiple times a day during holiday weeks, and I
Mhm.
wanna be with my own family the week of Christmas and Thanksgiving and Easter, like, so it just I knew, like, continuing to do what I'm doing now, like, it's not gonna work long term, even though it is a good fit and brings in good money without having to do, like, excessive amounts of work, it's still not gonna be a good fit. So I did a lot of, like, pros and cons lists. If I go this route, these are the pros, these are the cons, like, of literally everything to narrow down, like, what actually makes the most sense. And what I came to the decision of was that I need to be able to be home, and I need to be able to be with my kids, and I need to be able to maximize what I'm doing now. So, um, I'd watched someone else in my industry recently over the last year pivot to studio photography, because she had another child. And I was like, that actually kind of makes a lot of sense. Like to be able to shoot in your own home, like clients are coming to you, you're doing the sessions, you're never having to leave. Like your kids can be playing in the other room, like nobody's gonna know. Like it just seems like a really nice fit. On top of that, like I had already been playing around and testing products and adding on products after the session because I had a desire and I love, tangible products. So I'd already been kind of testing that. So I decided that, studio photography with an IPS model was actually going to be a better fit for me in the future than continuing what I've done in the past. Not that I'm shutting that down. It's like it's a well-oiled machine. I would never do that. There is going to have to be some shifts. I would love to have an associate team who shoots those sessions for me, um, but yeah, that's kind of how I came to that decision of here's my current focus and pivot.
What do you do when you feel like it's tough to push through those moments when you're really struggling or, like, just unsure of what direction to take next in your business?
I would say like I really think about what my future self wants because it's really easy to get comfortable and stay where you are today, but where you are today is not going to work a few years from now. And I'm so thankful today for the work that I put in 5 years ago because I would not have had or have the income that I have come in now had I not put in the work years ago. Um, I'd still be working in it 8 or it was like 7 to 6 if we're being honest. In a corporate job making I think I made like $55,000 a year there with a 1% increase in salary each year. Like I was not gonna grow very much in that company, and I was gonna be spending a lot of time working for them. And so, I'm so thankful today for the work that I put in then because of what I have now and the blessing of the business that I have now. And so I know that mom Sarah, who, is juggling being a mom and also has a passion for business and wants to continue running this business she has built, she's going to be really thankful that she built a business that works around her life and that she gets to be with her family on holiday weeks and that she's not, running around like a chicken with its head cut off all the time because she's got so much on her plate. So I always try to look forward to the future of like, what does my future self need? What is my future self going to appreciate?
That's so good, and I feel like especially for where I'm at right now, I'm just constantly wondering, like, what do I need to work on that is gonna get me where I need to go and put the most time in? Because burnout does come from doing the wrong things. It's not exactly like doing too much. Because if you're doing the right thing and you're passionate and it's getting you where you wanna go, you won't feel as burnt out as you would if you were doing, like, the other paths that you talked about, like your course or the weddings, because you realized it's not getting you to where you wanna go, and so that's a really good point, is to think about your future self and really decide what things are you doing currently that are gonna help you get there.
Absolutely.
So how do you feel like having these pivots and learning these lessons have impacted your business today?
I am definitely a lot more careful with my energy and with my pivots. I'm more self-aware, so not necessarily, knowing what I'm capable of, but what I'm willing to do because those are two different things. And you know, Sarah of 5 years ago who was fired up because she hated her corporate job and wanted to start this business is not the same Sarah of today who's been through some stuff,
Yeah.
and has gotten a little bit comfortable with running a business that works so well for her. So I know that I'm capable of a lot of things, but I don't necessarily have the desire to do a lot of things. So I'm a little bit wiser and more calculated when it comes to decisions. And so, I take a lot longer to make decisions. I take a lot longer to prepare for things. It's not just like I'm going to do this and then I'm launching it next week. So, this
Yeah.
process of studio and shifting to IPS, this has actually started at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, like the thought process, but a year and a half of like picking out what coach I wanted to walk me through this process, figuring out what style I wanted, like thinking about how this is going to work, Like all of these things, like like making my home studio into what I wanted it to be. All of these things have been a process, which has given me time, to learn a lot and to take pressure off myself. Um, but yeah, I think that's really like the biggest impacts is that I don't do things quickly anymore, which
Yeah.
used to make me feel like I was failing if I wasn't achieving something really quick.
Mhm.
Um, but I think actually in the long run, instead of spinning your wheels and burning yourself out, it's going to be more effective if you're a little bit more calculated and making the right decision.
That's a really good point that you just made too, because I I think I have learned that lesson right now because my latest pivot was pivoting from shoot and burn to in-person sales, and I just had this idea, like, it was just gonna work out so great, and I was gonna make so much more money and, like, get so many people who loved the products and stuff, and I've just been through a really tough time where I'm like, "Okay, actually, I have to find all new clients, like, my old clients aren't gonna do the same as my new clients, and this is gonna take a lot longer than I thought that it would've," and I just, like, shifted my business so quickly that I went through a really long period where I had no clients at all.
Mm.
And I think if I would have gone into it a little bit more slowly and, like, strategically and thought it out, then it would have been easier to adapt it into my life instead of going through this phase of, like, "How am I gonna survive? How am I gonna pay bills?" Because that doesn't help you to think towards your future either. Because 'cause you're thinking now, you're not thinking long term, you're thinking very short term.
Right. Yeah, I think being able to have my, family photography business that's just sustains itself at this point, like always on, has allowed me like to make these mistakes
Yeah.
or, whatever, learning lessons, and to take things slower with this IPS because I'm also in the same boat. I work with tourists. They don't live here. Starting with studio photography with little kids, I'm going to
Oh,
be looking for locals. So,
yeah.
living in an area where I actually don't know that many people, I'm not from here, and I don't have kids yet myself. Well, I have one in my belly, but
Aw.
not in my arms yet. Like I
Yeah.
don't have connections with other families with small
Yeah.
kids. So I am also starting from the ground up. But, I think you made a great point that if you're going to do a pivot, it's really helpful to make sure that you're really established in what you've already started first. That way, you're not pivoting. Well, sometimes, like I said, when the hurricane hit, like you have no choice. That's a required pivot. But with a more strategic long term pivot, like it's really important to have that established cash flow going so you're not worried about keeping the lights on and you can focus on like building those things. Although I will say that sometimes having that pressure of I got to keep the lights on, it's really motivating
True.
because that's something that I honestly think has held me back a lot is that I've got such a steady income coming in from that.
Mm.
My husband's a breadwinner in our family, so, like, my income is also just kind of, like, extra, and so I don't have that fire under me like I did years ago when we were just
Mhm.
starting out in life and we had thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands in student debt, and, like, we were, like, pushing hard to try to get where we wanted to be. So, you know, not saying don't make a pivot, like, if you don't have established cash flow, there are pros and cons to both,
Yeah.
absolutely, but, I think you just gotta know who you are and if you're gonna do better without having extra pressure, then maybe make sure you got some income coming in from somewhere, or if you're somebody who works better under pressure, then make the jump.
What are some things that you would tell other photographers to look for and think of in themselves and in their own business to know if it's time for them to make a pivot?
I would say, like, do you have big life changes coming? Like, do you need to
Mhm.
pivot? Like, if everything's good, if you're like, "I never plan on getting married, I never plan on having kids, my business works great for me," then you don't need to pivot, but I do think you should constantly be figuring out how can you continue to grow, because if you don't grow, you're gonna be like Amy Porterfield and all these other people who who did the same thing for 10 years straight, and then now it's, like, not really working anymore.
Mhm.
I'm like, "Well, they should have pivoted a long time ago because they would have prevented themselves from having to just shut everything down one day because it just doesn't work anymore." But, I think just, like, preparing for what's coming in the future, if you do know you're going to have life changes in the future, like, looking ahead and figuring out what kind of business do you want in that like stage of life or do you need in that stage of life? Because, you know, your needs are gonna change constantly and my needs are gonna keep changing, right? Like I may reach a point in 3 years, 4 or 5 years, I may have like 3 kids running around, like, and
Yeah.
I'm like, "You know what? They deserve more of my attention." Like, my whole business needs to be put on a back burner during this season, you know, and like, for my family, that would be okay because of, because my husband's, like, ability to support us, but, that's not the same for everybody, so if you know that you're gonna have to work, no doubt, like, then you need to be, like, preparing your business for those shifts, and I just think
True.
that that's just gonna serve you so well in those next seasons.
Yeah, that's so good. Honestly, it's probably a good idea to yearly at least sit down and decide what you want for your future. Like, just get in the practice of thinking long term. I know that's definitely something I never used to do. I would make decisions on such impulse, just what I was feeling in the moment. And it's so funny because I didn't even realize this until just now, you talking about it is like I am making this pivot in my business because my life has changed because I started photography when I was single, like, just out of college, like, actually still in college and just out of high school, and, like, I had all the time in the world, I went and hung out with my friends, and now I'm 3 years into being married, and my husband is always like, "You have no time for me," like, we never hang out, and so I'm like, "Okay, actually, something needs to change," and if I would've thought about that, like, thought more long term earlier, I think it could have saved me a lot of pain.
Yeah, it definitely I think the whole reason for pivoting is to, you know, reduce the friction later on
Yeah.
and, reduce you from getting to a place of burnout, prevent the chances of you getting to a place of burnout, and also just to make sure that you maintain the quality of what you're doing.
Yeah,
Because if I didn't and my life started getting crazy with kids, like, I'd probably start dropping the ball here and there, And so
100.
to make sure that I am in control of my schedule and my time and how many clients I bring on while also maintaining that income, like, that's gonna make sure that those clients I am serving are continued to be served really well and I maintain that really good reputation. So I think people who don't pivot or just continue to do what they're doing, they're the ones who they've been doing this for 10 years and you can tell they're over it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
they haven't changed. They're doing the same thing they've been doing for 10 years. They're over it. Their clients like aren't really happy. You start getting those
yeah,
people booking you and they're like, yeah, well, we just didn't really have that great of an experience with so and so the
mhm,
last few times. You know what I mean? Like people will start to notice
yeah,
and you will notice. And I think, like why even do this if you're not enjoying it? Like go do another job where you're gonna make the same amount or not have to work as much, like,
that's so true.
you
How do you give yourself grace in those periods where it does just feel so tough?
I'm gonna be honest, I'm really bad at this.
Yeah,
I am a I'm a pretty, like I'm pretty tough on myself, I'm tough on others, I'm not good with grace. Definitely something I need to work on, but I think, I know that when I'm feeling, like, really down about something or myself, I know exactly who to talk to, I have the people in my life, like, I'm also a huge, like, advocate for therapy, and I during a really time where I was super down on myself, like, I did go back to therapy and, like, work on my self-worth, um, so, like, I know who to talk to remind me of what I'm doing because it's hard as a solo entrepreneur, like, when you're by yourself all day long, like,
yeah,
you don't have a manager or a boss checking in with you to say, "Hey, I just want you to know you did a really good job on that presentation."
yeah,
Nobody's telling you good job, you know? Like, even my husband who, like, he doesn't know what to do all day, you know what I mean?
yeah,
So, like, nobody is telling you good job for the most part, so over time, it can add up. You have to be pretty
sure,
mentally tough, and you have to have people in your circle reminding you that you're doing a good job. And that's why I love having a coach and I love, having at least, a husband or a friend or somebody that you can talk to that knows a little bit about business and the business world and who can, encourage you and especially on those times when you're just feeling like, I don't know what to do. Like sometimes like they've got some great ideas that you just haven't thought of.
yeah, that's yeah, a really good point, especially just finding somebody who can tell you you are doing good. That's so helpful. What do you do to feel excited or find a new spark when you're feeling burnt out or tired?
This is gonna sound counterproductive, but honestly, I like to get away from, like, photography. Some people are like, "Oh, I do a creative shoot." I'm like, honestly, that
Mhm.
just adds to my, like,
Yeah.
stress and overwhelm. So I like to do things that are, like, completely opposite. Like, I at that time when I was kind of down and struggling and overwhelmed, and then I started volunteering at a farm kind of, and, so I would go, like, once a week and, like, pot up plants and seeds and plant, like, weed and do all the things and, like, just being outside, like, doing something new that's also kind of creative and with my hands, like, it was so, so restorative for me, and, so I think, like, sometimes just getting away from it all, like, is actually better, for me anyways, than trying to force myself to do something creative or whatever, like, I mean, you can't really
Yeah.
force creativity, like, it
Yeah.
just kinda comes to you. It's a gift, and so I think, for me, it's kinda just detaching and, like, doing things that I personally love and enjoy, and that's kinda when I fell in love with gardening and stuff, so that's kinda how I get through those little ruts and find my energy and passion again.
Yeah, I love that, and I've also found just helping others, like you said, volunteering, like, work on somebody else's problem instead
Mhm.
of your own for a while.
Absolutely.
What has been the biggest transformation in yourself or in your business before or after making the pivots that you've made?
Hmm. Well, I don't know. I guess I feel like I'm always still pivoting. So,
Yeah,
like, I guess just overall, I'm a lot more wise now. I think it's
yeah.
actually funny. I feel like I'm a lot more qualified to be a coach and a teacher and host workshops and teach online courses now than I actually was 2, 3 years ago when I was doing all of that. So it's kind of just funny to me that, like, now I actually have way more knowledge. Than I did then, but yeah, I would just say the wisdom, I think it only comes with experience, and unfortunately, that having to get that experience kinda sucks sometimes, but, you know,
Yeah,
that's really how you get there.
that's so true. Can you actually share about your course? I know you do have a course on lighting. Do you wanna talk about that for a minute?
Sure, it's actually a great course, it's an amazing course. I haven't done a great job marketing it because, like I said, I don't like to show myself, but it's really all about lighting, how to shoot in all different types of light, natural light as far as lighting goes, all your angles, all your types of light, posing and positioning for different types of light. Honestly, lighting is truly everything, and that was really my biggest struggle when I started with photography, especially shooting on so many beaches that face the west. Lighting is really tricky. So I fell in love with it pretty quick, and once I mastered it, things just really started rolling for me. So that was, of course, like the go-to topic I chose to make my course about. So yeah, it is still available for the time being. I don't know. I will probably always keep it available, but I will probably eventually shut down all the background programs that are supposed to
Mhm.
be selling it all the time, but except I don't actually run the ads because so
Yeah.
anyways,
It looks like a great course, though, from the social media stuff you've posted, just about sharing your lighting tips and stuff too. It looks like a really good course, especially for somebody who's a little newer and still trying to figure out that lighting, because I know that is a big trick to really getting your photos to look good.
it is.
Ok, one last question for you. What advice would you give your younger self?
Ooh. Um I would say maybe, like, slow down a little bit. Slow your roll, like, make wiser decisions. If I'd made wiser decisions early on, or even if I just maybe hired a coach who could help guide me a little bit and direct me, I was so adamant on doing everything myself, and figuring it all out on my own that it just took me so long to get things done that, I'm like, "Man, if I had a lot of success the first time I launched that course when I just bootstrapped it. If I'd had a coach at that time who could really quickly show me how to, like, create the funnel and get everything going, like, I think I would have, like, had a lot of more income come in from that course. But because then it took me over a year to get it refilmed, to get everything built out, to make sure it looked absolutely perfect and, like, professional and matched the quality that all these big time educators were putting out. By that point, like, everybody had moved on. My followers that were at that level or interested were like, they had grown, they'd moved on, so, like, I just wish that early on I would have, like, maybe had like a few more people in my court to guide me on the right steps and the right things to focus on. Um, and yeah, I think that would have helped me maybe not waste so much time or spend so much time on things. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, I think that'd probably be my best advice.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I've found that having a coach, I've always had some kind of coach or done a course, and it's helped me to grow way faster than I would have without it. So that's really good advice. Learn from other people's mistakes.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, thank you, Sarah, so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.